They wheeled her past me with wires and a mask, and the doctor set it flat like a hammer to the table. She's been poisoned, and I swear the whole emergency room tilted on its side. I had carried that little girl out of our dining room at Bayou and Brass like she was my own, sprinted through horns and heat, threw my tip money at the driver, begged the lights to turn green, you know what I mean? I was still saying her name. Eva. Stay with me, I'm right here. When her father blew through the doors like a storm in cufflinks, looked straight at my apron and my skin and decided the movie he was watching. "What did you do to my daughter?" he barked. Then his fist decided the next line, cheek, shoulder, ribs. The old words that try to shrink you back into place, nurses froze. Security stared and I tasted metal and humiliation at the same time, until my coworker Tariq, 6'3", brown jacket, delivery hat still on, yanked him back and said low enough to cut glass, "She carried your kid in here, touch her again, and deal with me, Sterling." Hale straightened his tie and promised out loud to erase my life, then turned his back like I wasn't even a person. Later, the doctor said, "Stabilized antidote. We think she'll be okay," and I finally breathed. Found out my ribs hurt from the inside, sat on a cot with a blanket that smelled like bleach and kept whispering. I didn't hurt her, like maybe if I said it enough the room would believe me the truth, though in that ER I wasn't a person. I was a story someone with power already decided to tell, so I had two choices: disappear inside it or punch a hole through it. And all I had was one friend who refused to look away. Tariq started rewinding the morning like a detective with a napkin for a notebook. Who touched what? Who plated the toast? Who came in the back door at 2 a.m.? He turned his laptop, and there she was, Kira Dalton, the executive assistant, with the perfect blazer and the schedule that runs other people's lives, slipping into the employee entrance, glancing left and right, tucking a small silver vial into a new server's pocket, like a magic trick. The server was Claudia, sweet kid, who smiled with her whole face. I said, "Why would she do that to a 5-year-old? And the answer that came later felt like a knife. Grief, rage, a son lost years ago to a hit, and a suspended sentence smoothed by company lawyers, pain aimed by a colder mind named Damon Kincaid, a strategist who sold outcomes in polite folders." The first twist hit when an account with no face, Ashline 72, pinged Tariq. You think it ends with an assistant check the red files in the basement box E14, then disappear. And I wish I could tell you we trusted the system and waited. But I knew better. We used an old contractor badge Tariq still had and walked into Hale Dominion just before midnight, like we belonged, past 2 guards arguing about the rockets, down to a room that smelled like toner and secrets. E14 was a gray box, with mitigation stamped all over the folders, and right there was a memo with my name, Tessa Grant. High emotional leverage. If she speaks publicly, trigger an incident to discredit her preferred narrative. Negligent, angry, unstable reading. It felt like a stranger predicted my worst day. My hands went cold, even though the air was warm. We found vendor payments to Harlow Strategy Group coded as narrative control. An email where Kira typed, "Do we proceed with Phase 2 now that subject survived?" Subject. That's what I was to them, not a person, a laver. That's when the click came from the aisle. Damon stepped out with a smile that never reached his eyes and said, "You're in the wrong room, Miss Grant." I hugged the box like a child and said, over my body. He reached into his jacket, and a voice I didn't expect cut the air. "Put your hand where I can see it." Damon Sterling had followed us. Guilt gut. I don't know, and for the first time he looked at me and said, "I'm listening now, yeah. That happened. The police came, papers were bagged. Damon went out with his jaw chewing through a problem. Kira resigned and confessed the part she could touch without falling apart. And for about one day, the public wanted a neat arc. Billionaire misjudges, waitress saves child, shadow man cuffed. But this isn't the movies. When you shove the first domino, the hallway becomes a maze. The smear arrived at dawn a week later. A shiny network ran The Truth About Tessa Grant. And the truth wasn't invited. Doctored clips made it look like I lunged at Sterling. Fake emails I didn't write. A shaky anonymous voice, even my cousin's mugshot tossed up like it was mine. My phone filled with threats, my chest filled with the kind of anger that turns to stone. Then a lawyer named Alana Reeves looked at the broadcast and said, "They overreached. Overreach leaves fingerprints." At the same time, Ashline 72 dropped a folder called Night Heron, planning memos time-stamped before the segment aired. Damon's initials in the corner. A distribution list routed through a PR shell in the same building as that network. I turned my phone camera on in my friend's kitchen. No makeup, chipped mug in frame, and told folks exactly what I'm telling you. I knew this would come when you speak the powerful. Try to swap your voice for theirs. But you saw me run with that child, you decide who I am. Drop your city hit, like if you hear me tell me where this kind of mess showed up in your life, you know what I mean. People move slower than bots, but they hit harder. Donations arrived. We rented a little storefront on Live Oak and named it Common Fire, a place for workers to get a lawyer's number, a digital safety kit, a table to sit at when the world shakes. Someone threw a bottle at it 2 weeks later, and fire crawled up the drywall. I stood in the smoke and thought maybe that was the last straw, turned out. It was the first brick. Neighbors showed up with hammers and crockpots and stubborn hearts, and we rebuilt bigger. The deeper root announced itself in a quiet cafe 2 cities over. Rain like glass on the windows. A man who asked us to call him Alan slid a flash drive across a plastic table and a wedding ring back and forth on his finger. Bastion. Holdings, he said, not a company so much as a mothership, rotating shell boards, offices that exist for a month. They don't just hire firms like Harlow, they design them. The drive was names and payments and a deck for a project called Lattice, long-term suppression of high-liability voices, with rows for nurses who reported unsafe staffing, teachers who asked for hazard pay, janitors who filmed racist managers, and yes, a waitress who carried a child into an ER under my name. Pilot outcome, repeatable. I didn't cry. I felt that old tilt and then a steadiness I hadn't known since the doctor said, poison. We didn't pitch one outlet. We pitched 15, paired up with a labor clinic, a civil rights org, a church that still does foot washing, and a tech collective that knows how to scatter files like seeds. We called it the Rampart Files, because if you build a wall around truth, we're going to name it out loud. Every 12 hours, a packet hit daylight. When one link froze, 5 more bloomed. You could hear the machine groan. A woman on the inside, codename Willow, warned us they had a friend on the investigation team, so we fed that leak a decoy, while the real final drop popped from a dozen little servers like popcorn. Save your lecture about games. This wasn't a game. The tribunal happened on a Tuesday, when the air made your skin remember its edges. Cameras lined the back. I didn't write an anthem. I told the room what you already know. My name is Tessa. I carried plates for a living and remembered orders like prayers. I saw a child turn blue and I ran. I took a slap because a man decided what I must be. Then I found out I was a bullet point in a strategy with a nice font. I held up the page that called me high emotional leverage, the pretty way to say easy to ruin, and said, I'm not angry like before. I'm awake, be awake with me. Don't punish pain out of people. Stop building machines that cause it. I didn't hear the room stand. I just felt my hands stop shaking. Indictments followed. Damon took a plea he tried to make sound noble. Harlow folded, bastions started to crack in places. It thought were permanent. Sterling stepped down and started a fund for workers who blow the whistle and get their lives set on fire. He asked me to sit on the board. I told him I'd build the board, and he could take a seat like everyone else, and to his credit, he nodded. We moved Common Fire into an old library that had been empty too long, filled the shelves with case files and chargers and a stack of donated hoodies for people who are always cold when they're telling the truth. Painted a mural of the hands that keep a city. Breathing, a nurse stopped me in the hospital one afternoon and said, "You were the one who didn't put the child down." Thank you. A week later, a crayon drawing arrived from Eva, 2 stick figures under a yellow barrette sun, captioned, "You were brave when the room was scared." It sits by my toothbrush, so I have to see it before I go fight another day. And if you want the messy part, Kira sits in the space where grief and harm overlap. I don't forgive in a way that erases anything. But I also won't let the men who designed the machine hide behind a grieving woman's face. As for Sterling, people aren't math problems. They're circles and detours. He hit me. Then he stood up. Then he stepped back. You don't have to like him for me to admit he changed you. Don't have to forgive me for not forgiving him. If you made it here, talk to me. Was his apology real or just PR? What should accountability look like for Kira? Years or work? How many times has bias made you wrong about somebody? At first glance, drop your city, your story, your disagreement hit, like so this reaches the folks who need it. Share it with the friend who still thinks the news always gets it right. And tell me in the comments what justice looks like when the cameras aren't rolling. Because that, more than anything, is how we figure out if we're getting better or just getting louder.